Today, the deck construction spotlight is on Cyber Dragons, a deck that, while always on the outskirts of competitiveness, has gotten a significant shot in the arm in recent months due to the release of Cyber Dragon Infinity and Chimeratech Rampage Dragon. Obviously, any Cyber Dragon deck must have 3 copies of the original Cyber Dragon. Among the 3 level 4 monsters that in the Cyber Dragon family, Drei, Zwei, and Armored Cyberin, Drei is far and away the most superior monster of the 3 as an 1800 attacker with both a useful level augmentation effect as well as a not really used very often depending on your deck design, but good when it works banish protection effect. 3 copies of Drei are basically mandatory. While Zwei is a serviceable card, I don't run it because it just doesn't have enough benefit to justify it. There are better cards. Its on-field I'm a Cyber Dragon recognition effect only functions during the controller's turn, requires a spell card in hand, revealing information to the opponent, which further limits its usefulness. Overall, I think people just tend to run Zwei because of its Cyber Dragon and the graveyard effect, but as stated before, I think there's a better combination card. Armored Cyberin is almost unplayable because it uses the old Union monster mechanic where both it and the equipped monster need to be on the field, and overall its equip effect is rather lackluster, largely because of when it was made. It's largely been power creep now. Proto Cyber Dragon is another lackluster Cyber Dragon substitute that only takes the name when on the field, not even in the graveyard, making it pretty much worthless. If this card had some special summoning ability innately kind of programmed into it, then it would actually be valuable, but it doesn't. Overall, I don't like Cyber Dragon core, but I accept the necessity of running it in this deck. The chief problem with core is that its search effect is of limited value because there really are only 2 actually good Cyber Spell or Trap cards, and neither of those cards are super important, valuable to get into your hand. They're nice when you have them, but it's not like either of them is completely game-breaking. However, despite the pathetic 400 attack points, the combination of the search, which does involve deck thinning, with the Cyber Dragon name for both the field and the graveyard relative to core, it is good enough to warrant running it, a begrudging 3 copies. Another nice card for this deck that fits with the theme is Cyber Eltanin. It's actually a rather fiendish little card because its overall effect sends monsters on the field to the graveyard, doesn't destroy, kind of in a similar vein to Chaos Emperor Dragon. Also because Eltanin does not destroy monsters, a number of monsters will not receive effects when removed from the field because those effects require it to be destroyed. Don't let the idea of summoning a 500 attack point monster in defense mode dissuade you from actually summoning this card when you need it. The chief advantage of Eltanin effect is the ability to send monsters to the graveyard, not its attack power, and pretty much clear the field for OTK purposes. One of the interesting things I see in a lot of other Cyber Dragon deck designs is while people run Zwei, they don't run Elemental Hero Prisma, which is far superior to Zwei in my eyes. Prisma thins your deck of Cyber Dragon to the graveyard, allowing you to immediately use a card like Overload Fusion or Cyber Repair Plant, as well as giving Prisma the Cyber Dragon name, making your fusion plays as easy, but typically even easier than they are with Zwei. Finally, Prisma is searchable via either Reinforcement of the Army, or if one chooses to risk it, a Hero Lives. In this deck, I don't think a Hero Live is enough quality. I think it risks a little too much, especially when you're playing around with a card like Power Bond. So I stick with Reinforcement of the Army, but the advantage to a Hero Lives is that you don't lose your normal summons, making fusion summoning a little more likely via normal summons of a Drei or Core. I run 2 copies of Prisma. Finally, I run 3 copies of Chronomaly Golden Jet as an additional light machine for both graveyard-based fusions and Cyber Infinity summoning. One card that may raise some eyebrows by its exclusion is Galaxy Soldier. I'm not a fan of Galaxy Soldier in this deck because I think it presses a little too hard to summon Infinity and does not provide a lot of value beyond that special summon level 5 mechanic. It's also an atrocious top deck in a deck that has enough atrocious top decks in it already. Of course, my experience, though, outside of a Galaxy deck with Galaxy Soldier is typically very bad. I have a lot of bad luck with it because I draw it when I don't need it and I don't draw it when I'd like it. Overall, I think there's a card that basically does what Galaxy Soldier kind of does, just in a different way, yet provides a little more versatility, in my opinion, for the deck. For the spells, I run one Raigeki and one Soul Charge, along with the Machine Deck staple, one Limiter Removal. As a Cyber Dragon deck, I like running the 3 copies of Cyber Repair Plant. I believe 3 copies is superior to 2 because while 3 copies can clog a little more, running Prisma significantly helps alleviate this clogging probability as well as makes your fusion plays a lot more live. Also, the ability to grab any light machine produces nice versatility, whether you want to grab a Cyber Dragon, whether you want to grab Eltanin, or whether you want to even grab Chronomaly Golden Jet. Also, I run the aforementioned 1 copy of Reinforcement of the Army for the Prismas. With the rise of Cyber Infinity, the Cyber Dragon deck typically now has 2 major options for producing a winning condition, the Fusion route or the Infinity route. To support the Fusion route, I run 3 copies of Power Bond, making either Twinned or Rampage a serious OTK threat, as well as 1 copy of Overload Fusion. To support the Infinity route, I run 2 copies of Instant Fusion to bring out the Panzer Dragons from the extra deck. And the Panzer Dragons are nice because they can be used kind of a last resort, I need to destroy something on the field during my end phase kind of effect as well as 2 copies of Double Summon. Double Summon is a nice little tech card for this deck, and is the card I'd use to replace Galaxy Soldier because it works well with the monster lineup, both for getting Infinity and supplementing fusion summoning probabilities due to Core, Drei, and Prisma all having the capacity to become Cyber Dragons on the field, but none of them actually being Cyber Dragons in the hand. Finally, rounding out the spells, I run 3 copies of Twin Twister to increase OTK probability and general playmaking ability, as well as another little tech card, 1 copy of Moon Mirror Shield, which allows any monster to become a walking wrecking ball, even the lowly core. For my trap cards, I play my 3 typical staples, 1 Torrential, 1 Bottomless, and 1 Solemn Warning, along with 1 Vanity's Emptiness, and 2 copies of Solemn Strike. Again, if the Solemn Strikes are out of your price range, then both Grand Horn and Void Trap Holes are excellent substitutes. One could take out this 1 Solemn Strike for a Cyber Network as well, but in my experience, Network is not really as useful as it probably should be. I don't know, maybe it's just my bad luck. Based on the Fusion XZ strategy for the deck, the extra deck is as followed: 1 Cyber Twin Dragon, 1 Chimeratech Fortress Dragon, 2 Chimeratech Rampage Dragon, 2 Panzer Dragon, 2 Cyber Dragon Novas, 2 Cyber Dragon Infinity. Some people only run 1. I get to Infinity a lot more than once with this deck through Nova, so 2 is... I'm more reassured at having 2 Cyber Dragon Infinities versus like a second Chimeratech Fortress Dragon. 1 Constellar Pleiades, 1 Artifact Durendal, 1 number 101 Silent Honor Arc, 1 Castel, and 1 Gagaga Cowboy. One might immediately look at this deck build and wonder about the monster count only being 15. Yeah, I know, it bugs me too whenever I look at this build, but in actual play experience, the deck does not brick nearly as one might think theoretically it should. It's kind of weird, but it does bug me. It's like 15 monsters, I look at the deck structure, but it just works. I really can't explain it, because I can see arguments for, yeah, this deck really should brick, and it doesn't brick very often, at least for me. I think the key advantage of this deck over other builds is the inclusion of Prisma, for it produces a number of increased opportunities to fusion summon over other available options. Well, that's my Cyber Dragon deck. Thank you for your attention and your time. I'm out.